They say blood is thicker than water. But as I sit here now, looking back, I wonder if that's always true. My name is Margaret, and once upon a time, I believed my son was the only anchor I had left in this world. When my husband passed away, the silence in our house grew heavy, like an unwelcome guest that never left. But my son, Daniel, was the light that kept me going. He was my pride, my reason to wake up each morning. I poured every ounce of love, every bit of sacrifice, into raising him. And for many years, I truly believed we were inseparable. I remember evenings when we would sit by the fireplace. Daniel, still a boy with bright eyes, would point at the photographs on the mantel. "Mom," he'd say, "tell me about Grandpa again." His voice always carried that childlike curiosity. And I would smile, my heart swelling with joy, as I told him the stories of our family, the hardships, the victories, the heirlooms that carried our legacy. Those heirlooms, they were never just objects. My wedding ring, my grandmother's locket, the antique clock that ticked steadily in our living room, they were pieces of history, threads of our identity as a family. Each one carried a story, a piece of love and loss. There was one heirloom I cherished above all, a delicate porcelain vase, painted with golden lilies. It had survived wars, journeys across oceans, and decades of careful hands. My husband once told me, "This vase is not just fragile porcelain. Margaret, it's our story. Promise me you'll protect it." And I did. I promised him. In those days, Daniel seemed to understand. He would run his little fingers along the vase and whisper, "One day, Mom, I'll keep it safe for you." His words melted my heart. I trusted him more than anyone. He was my son, my blood. Back then, the house was alive with warmth and trust. I cooked meals while Daniel hummed his favorite songs. We celebrated birthdays with laughter and modest cakes. And every night, as I tucked him into bed, he would hold my hand and say, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll always take care of you." I believed him. I believed every single word. It started small, almost invisible. Daniel stopped looking me in the eyes when he came home late at night. He used to kiss me on the cheek and ask how my day had been. Now, he mumbled a quick, "I'm tired," and disappeared into his room. It started small, almost invisible. Daniel stopped looking me in the eyes when he came home late at night. He used to kiss me on the cheek and ask how my day had been. Now, he mumbled a quick, "I'm tired," and disappeared into his room. At first, I told myself it was just stress. He was grown now, working long hours, trying to build his career. He needs space, I thought. He's under pressure, and I mustn't burden him with my loneliness. That was how I justified it. That was how I allowed myself to ignore the unease in my chest. But then things began to vanish. At first, it was a silver photo frame with a picture of my parents. I assumed I had misplaced it. Then the pocket watch my husband had carried during the war. I searched the whole house, my heart pounding with anxiety. "Daniel," I asked him one morning, "have you seen your father's watch? I can't seem to find it." He didn't even look up from his coffee. "Maybe you just lost it." "Mom, you're always forgetting things lately." His tone was dismissive, almost cold. I remember staring at him, the words stinging like a slap. Always forgetting things. No, I wasn't losing my mind. Those items meant everything to me. I had cared for them meticulously for decades. But Daniel's answer was so casual, so firm, that I began to question myself. Still, the gnawing doubt wouldn't let me rest. I stayed up late one night, walking through the house in silence. The ticking of the antique clock in the living room was the only sound. I passed by the cabinet where I kept my grandmother's locket, the one she gave me on her deathbed. My hand trembled as I opened the drawer. Empty, gone. I felt my chest tighten, as though someone had punched the air from my lungs. I clutched the drawer, whispering to myself, "No, no, no, not this one, not Grandma's locket." The next morning, when Daniel came into the kitchen, I confronted him. "Daniel, the locket is missing. Did you move it? Did you touch it?" For a brief second, his face flickered something between guilt and irritation, but he quickly masked it. "Mom, you're obsessing over old junk. Maybe you dropped it somewhere. Or maybe it got thrown out when we cleaned last month." "Old junk," I repeated, my voice shaking. "That locket is our family's history. It was your great-grandmother's. How could you say that?" He rolled his eyes. "Mom, calm down. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Then he grabbed his jacket and slammed the door behind him, leaving me trembling in the kitchen, clutching the edge of the table to keep from falling. From that day forward, I began to notice other changes. He spoke to me less, avoided conversations, and whenever money was mentioned, his tone sharpened. He asked questions like, "Do you have any savings tucked away? Maybe you should think about selling some of those antiques. You could use the money." Every time he said it, my heart broke a little more. These weren't just antiques. They were pieces of my soul, memories of my late husband, the stories of our family. Selling them would be like erasing who we were. One rainy evening, I heard him on the phone. He was pacing in the living room, his voice low but urgent. I hid by the doorway, straining to catch his words. "Yeah, I've got more coming. Don't worry. They're genuine. Family heirlooms. I'll bring them tomorrow." My blood ran cold. My hands shook as I pressed them against my mouth to keep from gasping aloud. More coming, genuine heirlooms. He wasn't just careless, he was selling them. Piece by piece. He was stripping our family bare, erasing every trace of the life I had built. I stepped back, my heart pounding, my mind racing. A storm raged outside, lightning flashing against the windows. But the real storm was inside me. My own son, my blood was betraying me in the cruelest way possible. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, tears soaking my pillow. My husband's words echoed in my mind, "Promise me you'll protect it." I had promised, and now, not only was I failing him, but I was being betrayed by the very person I had trusted most. The next morning, when Daniel came down for breakfast, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Daniel," I said firmly, my voice low but trembling, "I heard you last night. On the phone? Who were you talking to? What are you doing with our heirlooms?" He froze for a moment, then narrowed his eyes. "You were eavesdropping." His voice rose in anger. "I was trying to understand what's happening to my family's legacy," I shot back. "Tell me the truth. Daniel, are you selling them?" His silence was answer enough. He looked at me with a hardness I had never seen before, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. "Those things don't matter, Mom," he finally said. "They're just objects. We need money, and I'm doing what has to be done." "We," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Or just you?" He turned away, refusing to answer, and walked out the door. I collapsed into the chair, my body shaking. The son I had raised, the boy who once promised to protect me, was now dismantling everything I held dear. And for the first time in my life, I felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. I wish I could tell you that things improved after that confrontation, that Daniel reconsidered his actions, that he saw the hurt in my eyes and remembered the boy who once promised to protect me. But no. If anything, my words only seemed to push him further away. The days that followed were drenched in silence. He came and went as he pleased, rarely eating at home, rarely speaking to me. When we did exchange words, they were sharp, curt, and left me feeling as though I were a stranger in my own house. But the silence wasn't the worst part. It was the emptiness. Every week, it seemed another heirloom disappeared. The porcelain vase, my husband's greatest treasure, was the one I clung to most. For days, I checked on it like a mother checks on her child, my hands brushing gently against its cool surface. Each time I passed the cabinet, I whispered, "Still here. Still safe." Until one morning, it wasn't, I screamed. A raw, guttural cry tore from my throat. My knees buckled, and I collapsed onto the floor. "No," I sobbed, clutching at the empty shelf. "You promised me." I could almost hear my late husband's voice echoing. "Promise me you'll protect it." When Daniel came home that evening, I was waiting. The vase was gone. And so was my patience. "Where is it?" I demanded the moment he walked through the door. The cabinet door hung slightly ajar, as though mocking me. My stomach dropped before I even looked inside. My trembling fingers pulled the door open, and there it was, nothing but dust, where the vase had stood for generations. "Answer me," I cried, my voice hoarse. "Where is the vase? Tell me you didn't." "It's gone." "Mom." He cut me off, his tone flat. "I sold it." For a moment, the world tilted. The room spun around me. You sold it," my voice cracked, almost childlike. "Yes," he snapped. "And you need to stop acting like these dusty old things matter more than reality. We need money. I need money." That vase was just sitting there collecting dust. "At least now, it's useful." "Useful," I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. "That vase was your father's soul. It was our family's story. How could you?" He slammed his fist on the table, making me flinch. "Enough. Mom, you live in the past. You cling to dead people and old memories while I'm here, trying to survive. You don't understand what it's like out there. You never did." I stared at him, tears blurring my vision. "And you don't understand what it's like in here," I whispered, pressing my hand against my chest. "To watch the people you love tear away every piece of your life until there's nothing left." But he didn't hear me, or he didn't care. He stormed off to his room, the door slamming shut with a finality that rattled through the walls. That night, I couldn't breathe. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the empty cabinet, listening to the storm of anger and grief inside me. I wanted to scream at him, shake him, beg him to stop. But what good would it do? He had already chosen his path. He got off near a pawn shop. I froze on the sidewalk, my breath catching in my throat. Through the dirty glass window, I saw him inside, speaking with the shop owner. He pulled objects from his bag, familiar objects. My father's cufflinks, my mother's pearl earrings. The next morning, I followed him. I trailed behind as he left the house, keeping my distance. He walked quickly, clutching a duffel bag. I felt like a ghost, invisible, but watching. He boarded a bus into town, and I followed, my heart hammering in my chest. I staggered back from the window, tears burning down my cheeks. It was no longer suspicion. It was fact. My son was selling away our family's soul, and I was powerless to stop him. When he came home later that day, his pockets full of betrayal, I confronted him again. His eyes flickered with surprise. "What are you talking about?" "The pawn shop," I whispered. "I saw you. You sold them. All of them. The cufflinks, the earrings. You even took the vase." My voice broke on the word vase. "No," I said firmly, my tears drying into anger. "They were never yours to sell. They were entrusted to us, to protect, to pass down. You betrayed me. You betrayed your father." "Stop talking like he's still here," Daniel snapped, his face twisted with rage. "He's dead. Mom dead, and all you have left is junk you're too weak to let go of. I won't be dragged down by your obsession with the past. I'm building my future, with or without you." Those words cut deeper than any knife. "With or without you." He stormed upstairs again, leaving me shaking in the kitchen. But this time, something inside me shifted. The grief was still there, raw and heavy. But beneath it, a spark of steel began to burn. I had lost my husband. I had lost the warmth of family dinners, the comfort of laughter echoing through our home. And now, I was losing every tangible reminder of who we were, but I would not lose myself. I wiped my tears and lifted my chin and whispered into the silence, "Daniel, if it's war you want, then war you shall have." From the moment I whispered those words, "If it's war you want, then war you shall have," I knew there was no turning back. The house, once a place of comfort, had become a battlefield. Every creak of the floorboards, every slam of Daniel's door felt like a shot fired across enemy lines. We barely spoke. But when we did, it was through clenched teeth and raised voices. I tried to protect what little I had left. I hid the few heirlooms that remained, my wedding ring, the faded letters my husband wrote to me during the war, a handful of photographs in places I thought Daniel wouldn't look, beneath floorboards, inside old shoeboxes in the attic. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before he found them. One night, I awoke to the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, creeping through the hallway. My heart thundered as I slipped out of bed and followed the noise. There he was, crouched near the cabinet where I had once kept the vase, a flashlight in hand, rifling through drawers. "Daniel," I said sharply, my voice echoing through the dark. He froze. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to sneak into the kitchen for cookies at midnight. But when he turned, the hardness in his eyes reminded me that boy was long gone. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Looking for something," he muttered. "Something. Or everything." My voice trembled with fury. "Haven't you taken enough? Do you want to strip this house bare until there's nothing left but walls?" He stood, towering over me, the flashlight casting shadows across his face. "You think these things matter? Mom, they don't. They're just objects. You're clinging to a past that's dead and buried." I stepped closer, my fists trembling. "No, Daniel, they're not just objects. They are us. Every scratch, every tear, every faded photograph tells the story of who we are. You're not just selling heirlooms, you're selling our blood, our history, your father's legacy." For the first time, his mask cracked, his jaw tightened. His eyes glistened with something like pain, but just as quickly, it turned to anger. "Don't you dare talk about Dad," he spat. "Where was his legacy when we had bills piling up? Where was his legacy when I needed help starting my life? All he left us were old trinkets and an old woman who refuses to move on." The words hit me like blows. An old woman refuses to move on. He saw me as nothing but dead weight. My voice dropped to a whisper. "You've changed, Daniel. I don't recognize you anymore. Maybe you never really knew me," he muttered before storming past me, shoving my shoulder as he went. The shove wasn't hard, but it was enough to make me stumble. Enough to make me realize just how fragile the thread between us had become. The following days were filled with unbearable tension. I tried to guard my treasures, but Daniel was relentless. Every time I returned from the market, something else was missing. A painting, a brooch, even the quilt my mother had stitched by hand. I confronted him again, tears streaming down my face. "Why? Daniel, why can't you leave me even a single memory?" His face was stone. "Because memories don't pay rent." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about survival. It wasn't about helping the household. It was greed. Pure, selfish greed. The breaking point came one evening when I discovered my wedding ring, my last, most precious keepsake, was gone. I tore through drawers, boxes, every hiding place I had left. Nothing. The ring I had worn since the day I married the love of my life had vanished. I ran to Daniel's room, my chest heaving, my vision blurred by rage. I burst through the door without knocking. "Where is it?" I screamed. He looked up from his phone, startled. Where's what? My ring. The ring your father gave me on our wedding day. Where is it? His silence was deafening. He looked away, his jaw tightening. That was all the answer I needed. You monster, I whispered, my voice breaking. You've taken everything. Everything your father and I built together. Every memory I held on to. You've sold it all for what? For money you'll waste by tomorrow. He stood abruptly, his face red with anger. I'm not a monster, I'm surviving. You think the world cares about your stupid little stories. About Dad's watch, or some cracked vase. They don't. I'm the only one who sees reality. I'm the only one strong enough to let go. Let go, I cried. You didn't let go. Daniel. You destroyed, you tore our family apart with your own hands. You betrayed me. You betrayed your father's memory. You betrayed yourself. The words hung in the air like thunder. For a moment, he looked at me as though I were a stranger. His face twisted with fury and something else, shame. Maybe. Buried deep beneath the surface. Then, without another word, he shoved past me and stormed out of the house. The door slammed so hard the walls shook. I collapsed onto his bed, clutching a pillow to my chest. My body racked with sobs. My heart felt like it was splitting apart. Not just from the loss of objects, but from the loss of my son, the boy I had once loved more than life itself. That night, the house was silent again. But it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a graveyard. Heavy and suffocating. As I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I realized the truth. Daniel was no longer my son. Not in the way that mattered. He had chosen greed over love, betrayal over loyalty. And if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't just lose my heirlooms, I would lose myself. I closed my eyes, letting the tears dry on my cheeks, and whispered into the darkness, this ends now. There comes a moment when grief turns into something else. When the endless nights of crying, the hollow days of despair, are no longer enough. That moment came for me after Daniel stole my wedding ring. I had cried myself empty. My tears had dried into something sharper, something like fire. For days, I moved through the house like a shadow. But inside my mind, I was awake for the first time in years. I began to notice things I had ignored before. The late-night calls, the stacks of cash hidden sloppily in his drawers, the way he rushed to silence his phone whenever I entered the room. Daniel wasn't just selling heirlooms. He was building a world for himself. Piece by stolen piece, on the ashes of mine. One evening, I heard him speaking on the phone again. This time, I didn't hide. I stood in the hallway, the words seeping through the thin walls. I told you. I'll get more. She doesn't even notice half of it. By the time she realizes, it'll all be gone. Yes. Yes. I'll bring it tomorrow. Don't worry. It's worth every penny. His laughter was the final nail in the coffin. I realized then that this wasn't just about money. It was about control. About power. My own son saw me as nothing more than an obstacle. A weak old woman clinging to memories. But he had underestimated me. That night, I went to the attic. Among the dusty boxes and cobwebs, I found an old trunk filled with letters, documents, and photographs. Some were fragile with age, but they carried something far stronger than porcelain or gold proof. Proof of ownership, of lineage, of legacy. Proof that those heirlooms were mine and that Daniel had no right to them. I gathered everything carefully, placing them in a folder. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but from determination. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, an old friend. Ellen, who worked as a lawyer. Her voice on the phone was steady, warm, like a lifeline. Margaret, it's been so long. Are you all right? I swallowed the lump in my throat. No. Ellen, I'm not. I need your help. She listened patiently as I poured out the story how Daniel had been selling everything. How he had stripped the house bare. How I feared I had nothing left. My voice cracked. But Ellen's remained firm. You did the right thing by calling me. Margaret, you have rights. If he's selling things that legally belong to you, especially without consent, there are consequences. We can act. For the first time in months, I felt hope. That evening, when Daniel returned, I was waiting at the table. No tears this time. No shaking voice. Just steel. We need to talk, I said firmly. He rolled his eyes. What now? Mom, I placed the folder on the table. This. Proof of everything. Every heirloom. Every item. They are mine. Daniel, not yours. You had no right to sell them. His face darkened. What are you trying to do? Take me to court, your own son. If I have to, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. Because you stopped being my son the moment you betrayed me. The words hit him like a slap. For the first time, he didn't have a quick retort. His mouth opened, then closed. His fists clenched at his sides. You wouldn't dare, he hissed. Watch me, I whispered. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he stormed away, slamming his door. The familiar sound of retreat. But this time, I didn't crumble. I sat tall, clutching the folder, knowing I had taken my first step. Over the following days, Ellen helped me file reports. We documented everything: the missing vase, the jewelry, the ring. She reached out to the pawn shops, some of which kept records. Receipts with Daniel's name. Each one was like a knife twisting deeper, but also like bricks building a wall of justice. When the police finally came to the door, Daniel was furious. He shouted, cursed, called me names I never imagined hearing from my own child. You're ruining my life, he screamed as they led him away for questioning. No, Daniel, I whispered, tears burning in my eyes. You ruined it yourself. As the door shut behind him, the house fell silent once more. But this silence was different. Not the suffocating silence of betrayal. It was the silence of a storm passing, leaving behind broken branches, but also clear skies. I sank into my chair, exhausted but alive, clutching the only thing Daniel couldn't steal from me, my strength, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I thought I had lost forever: hope. They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from family, but justice, when it finally arrives, burns brighter than any wound could scar. The day Daniel was taken for questioning, I thought it would be the end, but it wasn't. It was only the beginning. The police had questions, but questions were not enough. They needed evidence, and Ellen helped me gather it. Receipts from pawn shops, bank records showing sudden deposits, even surveillance footage of him walking in with my treasures. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall he had built around himself, a wall that would eventually become his prison. Still, part of me hoped he would repent, that he would knock on my door, fall to his knees, and beg for forgiveness. I prayed for that night after night, but forgiveness never came. Instead, Daniel grew colder. He hired lawyers, tried to twist the story. He said I was senile, that I had given him permission to sell the heirlooms. He painted me as a confused old woman clinging to fantasies. The betrayal cut deeper than ever. My own son stood in front of strangers and called me crazy. The trial was brutal. I sat there, trembling, as lawyers questioned my memory, my sanity, my worth. But then Ellen stood, her voice calm and steady, and one by one, she laid the evidence bare. Receipts signed in Daniel's handwriting, witnesses from the pawn shops confirming his sales, even a letter from my late husband, describing the vase and its history, proving it belonged to me alone. When the judge finally looked at Daniel and said, "You betrayed your mother's trust and broke the law," I felt something inside me shift. A weight I had carried for months began to lift. Daniel was sentenced. The details blur in my memory: community service, fines, restitution. But the true punishment was not written on paper. It was written on his face. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the fear of losing money, but the fear of losing everything: his freedom, his reputation, his future. As they led him away, he turned to me. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the boy I once knew, the boy who promised to protect me. His lips trembled, as though he wanted to speak, but no words came, only silence, and perhaps that silence was the truest apology he could ever give. In the weeks that followed, I walked through my house with new eyes. The shelves were still bare, the cabinets still empty. Many heirlooms were gone forever, scattered across the hands of strangers. But the emptiness no longer felt like defeat. It felt like space for something new. I began to fill the rooms, not with objects, but with purpose. I volunteered at community centers, telling my story to women who had been betrayed, abandoned, or silenced. I donated what little I had left, not because I was forced to, but because I chose to. One afternoon, I stood before a group of young women, many of them struggling single mothers, and I held up my grandmother's locket, the one piece I had managed to recover. "This," I said, my voice strong, "is not just jewelry. It is survival. It is memory. It is proof that we endure, even when the people we love most turn against us. Betrayal does not define us. What we do after betrayal, that is what defines us." They listened, eyes wide, and for the first time, I felt my pain transform into something larger than myself. It became fuel. It became light. But justice is never just about punishment. It is about balance. One evening, months after the trial, I received a letter from Daniel. My hands shook as I opened it, afraid of what venom it might contain. But it wasn't venom. It was brokenness. "Mom," it began, "I don't know how to start. I lost everything: my job, my friends, my future. And it's my fault. I know that now. I was blind with greed. And I hurt you in ways I can never undo. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. But I want you to know that every night, I see your face when they led me away. I see the pain I caused, and it haunts me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Tears blurred the page. I clutched the letter to my chest, my heart a storm of emotions: anger, sorrow, love, loss. They swirled together until I could no longer separate them. Did I forgive him? No, not fully. Some wounds are too deep for forgiveness. But I understood. And maybe, for now, that was enough. Justice had been served. My son had paid a price, though not the one I had wished for when I still believed in reconciliation. And me, I found redemption not in punishment, but in survival. I learned that heirlooms, as precious as they are only symbols. The true legacy is not porcelain or gold. It is strength. It is resilience. It is the unbreakable will to rise after being shattered. The house remains quieter now, emptier, but it is my home again. Not a battlefield, not a prison, a sanctuary. And every morning, when the sun rises and light spills through the windows, I whisper to myself, "He took my memories, but he did not take me." Because in the end, I am still here. I survived, and I will never let betrayal silence me again.